Good afternoon, strategy gamers. Welcome back to episode 23 of our Let's Play series, War in the East 2, Stalingrad to Berlin. In this episode, we're going to be finishing up the ground combat phase of turn 12, and we're also going to be taking a little bit more of a look than we have in the past episodes around combat resolution messages and the overall combat results windows, and a lot of them detail that we perhaps have skimmed over in past episodes. So that'll be the new mechanic that we're going to introduce throughout this episode as we have various ground combat engagements. So that's the focus for today. In the last episode, we had worked our way all the way down here to the front near the Stalingrad combat area, and we had left off with creating this defensive perimeter along the river here. With an excitement of maybe in the future looking to press even further west, creating a secondary supply line as we continue for our encirclement of Rostov, which is coming up soon. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the Stalingrad pocket proper, because I think this is going to be one of the most important areas for us to deal with this turn. Again, considering their size and their forces, I don't know we're going to be in a position where we can actually in this turn, break through and finish off the entire pocket. But I think we can probably get one or two more hexes gone, and if we just do that every turn, we're going to be in a pretty good spot. So let's start off by looking at which hexes will be the best target. So we're going to start here, and if we just take all of our forces, what is our math here? So 32 to 4. That's more than enough to attack there. Now, if we take only the units that are bordering this, then we have 16 to 4. That's pretty close. So I think we're going to give that a try, which then leaves open the possibility that this tile of chips and this tile could then pursue some type of attack on either this hex or this hex. So if we can successfully break through with what we have here, it'll free up those units. Now, before we actually go and engage in this combat, as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at the combat resolution messages. Now, there's a setting in the game where if we go to admin and user preferences, where we can actually change the level of detail for combat resolution messages. So right now, we're defaulted to a message level of 3. And we have a combat resolution message delay of 2, so 2 seconds. So at the very top of each combat resolution window, there's actually a message box. And this value goes from 1 to 7, and the higher the number, the more detail it's going to show you. So if you had this set at level 7, the message box would tell you things like Soviet 41 Rifle Brigade loads ammunition, advances. And then 2 seconds later, it might say Soviet Rifle Brigade 41 fires, disrupts German mortar unit, right? It's going to go down to that level of detail for every action the game is actually simulating. I would strongly encourage you, the viewer, to at some point in one of your games actually play around with this combat resolution message level, and even just try a couple with it set to 7 and read through the different actions that the computer is simulating in the background. Because I think it gives you a very good idea of the scale to which the developers of this game have put thought into how they resolve combat. I mean, this is not a board game where there's 3 combat resolution tables, you look at all the modifiers, woods, +2 to die roll, all of these things, roll dice, were you successful or not. It's nothing like that. I mean, it really is going down to each ground element within the units you have on the map, and simulating all of these different variables, which is just so impressive. And when you have the combat resolution message level at 3, 2, or 1, it's going to feel very similar to what you've seen in this series so far, where you get the pop-up box that says what was kind of the result, and you can see those top-line details at the end. But there's no other live feed or live trickle of messages of what's happening on that front line. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to increase this to 5. You can change this mid-game during your save, etc., and it'll be just fine. And we're going to take a look to see what combat looks like with the message level at 5. So we're now going to close out our user preferences. And we have these units selected. We're still going to do our attack here on these 3 German divisions that are defending this hex. So let's go ahead and proceed with that. And now, here's what I meant. If you look at the very top, this is that message box I was describing. So here you can see all of these different actions that the computer is simulating in the background. And then below, in these boxes where it aggregates the combat losses and results, you see these numbers slowly start to trickle up as casualties and units are being destroyed come into the battle report. So I probably should have set the message delay to be more than 2 seconds so that I can actually go through and read some of this detail for you. But here, for example, we have a Rifle Squad 42 damaged by a 7.5 rifle. Here we have another Rifle Squad damaged by an MG34 light machine gun. Here we have a machine gun damaging another machine gun, right? So it's looking at the different elements of ground units and how they are damaging each other. Now, if you don't want to sit here and actually watch each and every message scroll through, what you can do is you can actually hit the X to exit the combat screen, and then it will resolve the entire conflict. And then you can go back here to your battle recap details, and we'll see that all of these units surrendered, right? And then we can take a look at some of the details about what happened in this assault. So normally we've done a lot of stuff around, okay, so the fortification level was degraded, 18,000 men were lost, 188 gun platforms, 14 armored fighting vehicles. That's the level of detail historically we've gone through on these episodes. On occasionally, we've gone to ground losses to see, for example, what type of armored fighting vehicles Panzer Division was using, right? Like, were they bringing up the Tiger tanks by Leningrad, which was a bit of a concern for us because we wanted to know how much of a disadvantage would we be at when they started to bring up those Panzer Divisions. But let's walk through each of these tabs, actually, to go into a little bit more depth of their explanation. So the first is just general info. And again, this is a very high-level summary of the battle. It's not going to get down to any specific element that existed within one of your divisions, brigades, or anything like that. So we had a total of 3 units in the battle. And this is, excuse me, for the Germans on this side. 3 units were in the battle. 3 of them were on-map units. There were no support units, right? So there was no German 43rd Tank Brigade or Panzer Brigade attached to this Panzer Corps, for example. There were no support units. Ground HQ, so it was 3. Ground elements. So an element would be, we're going to hop over real quick to the ground losses tab to show you here. A ground element is like each of these rows, right? So like a Panzer III armored fighting vehicle is 1 element. A Rifle Squad 1940, that stands for, is 1 element. And if there's 118 rifle squads, that's 118 rifle elements. So the ground elements is just an aggregated summation of all of those different units that are composed from these divisions that were involved in the battle. We see that 460 of them were actually damaged and 0 were disrupted. Down here we have air missions, and it's telling you how many missions occurred for bombing, escorting, combat air patrol, etc. that occurred in support of this ground attack. As you've noticed, we've had our air armies resting for a month or 2 here as the Russian winter continues to set in. All of this information is then repeated on the right for the Soviet player. Number of units, we had 21 units in total involved. 9 of them were on map, and that makes sense, right? We had 3 hexes with 3 chips in each hex. That's 9 divisions that were involved. And there were 12 support units. And here, if we scroll through, we can actually see the support units that were involved. And here you see the 298th Rifle Division had a 10th Tank Brigade, a 9th Guards Heavy Tank Regiment, a 1st Guards Light Rocket Regiment, and all of these other support units were here, totaling to 12. For ground elements, this again repeats just the exact same. One interesting one that you don't see on the Germans because of the fog of war element that we have in our settings is average morale, average experience, and average fatigue. And this is something that as I was preparing to go over this detail in the episode, I thought to myself, this is probably something that we should spend a little bit more time looking at, because we have spent a lot of time looking at fatigue. But two elements of ground unit composition that we have not really explored, and will in a future episode, is the impacts of morale and experience. And I think that if we start to look at a few more of our combat results panes and windows here, it might help us to see a little bit more detail around what the average morale and experience was for the units we had involved, so then we can better manage how far are we pushing the units. Are we pushing them too hard? In the middle of this general info slide, we see a breakout of number of units destroyed, damaged, and disrupted. And this goes into two columns for each side, Axis and Soviet. So first is ground elements. So here we see that the Germans had 24 ground elements destroyed. So again, an example of an element would be a 1940 German Pioneer squad, right? That is one element. But over here in the list of men, it has 181 men were killed or lost in action. That squad might be representative of 8 soldiers, right? And that's why this number is so much higher than the ground elements number. And then that breaks through for number destroyed, number damaged, number disrupted. So we see that most of their casualties actually happened when they were retreating, right? So when they were fleeing the battle, that's when they had most of their casualties. And in this case, it actually counts as units being surrendered, which is how we get to this 18,823 men lost, because so much of it was at the end of the battle in the retreat phase, these units surrendered. And let's just pretend all 3 of these units weren't surrendering, right? If this was just a battle on the front line, and if these divisions remained intact after the battle, right? You might see a smaller number on this retreat line under destroyed, and that represents that as their forces were retreating from the battle, how many of them did you kill, capture, what have you, right? So as a tank is desperately throwing its gearbox into reverse to try to leave the battlefield, did you destroy it? That would be one destroyed record here under ground elements. Okay, so this is the general info tab. Ground losses tab, again, we've spent a little bit more time on this, so it's a little easier to cover. We have our 3 filters down here if we want it to look just, for example, at elements that were represented by men or infantry, right? So not tanks and not, say, field artillery pieces, etc., or AA guns or something like that, right? These are just things that the foot soldiers of the armies were involved in. Let's go ahead and toss all these back on. On the far left, we have this total column. So this is saying in total how many elements were there. And at any time selecting one of these columns, you can actually sort it largest, smallest, or smallest, largest in order here. Right, so you see they only had 1 Panzer IV-G. Let's go back this way, I think. Then we have the exact same 3 columns that we were discussing here on our general info tab, except it's broken down by the detail of the element that was lost, damaged, disrupted, etc. So here we have destroyed, and again, this means the tank blew up and is just beyond repair. It means the tank was captured. Right, that all goes into destroyed. It's no longer something the Germans could use. Damaged is a little different, right? You could have the tracks on a Panzer damaged, but you still may be able to, in a later turn, then repair the tracks on that particular unit. So that's what this is representing. In terms of damaged rifle squads, right, it could be that rifle squad lost some equipment that the rifle squad uses, or maybe it had loss of men, but it wasn't completely destroyed. And disrupted is, again, kind of similar, where it just deteriorates the fighting force of that particular unit, severely hampering their morale and fatigue, right, as they get disrupted. So that's the ground losses tab. This tab is repeated for air losses, except we don't have any examples here, right, because we don't have our air campaign active, but it would display in a very similar fashion to the ground, except it breaks it out by, okay, how was that particular aircraft loss? Was it A2A, which is air to air. Flak, right, so fire from the ground, was it an operational loss? So that's, for example, the weather effects that we've been running into. The third tab we're going to cover is ground combat. And this is probably the most detailed of all of these tabs that you can really dig into, but there's some really interesting learnings if you really get into it. And especially if you have these tight pitched battles where you want to find out why wasn't I able to break through, or if there were heavy casualties that you didn't expect, this is a good tab to try to unravel why. There is no analytical insight that's going to pop out and say you lost the battle because your 75mm Pak 40 AT guns didn't have any penetrating hits with AP rounds against the enemy's armor. Right? It doesn't shout out to you what that answer is, but the raw data is here for you to be able to see a lot of those insights. So going through this, let's take a look at what's going to be a good one to look at. Maybe we actually take that 75mm Pak 40 AT gun. We're going to use this as our example. So the Germans had a total of 4 of these fighting in the battle. FPE and, sorry, I just wanted to make sure I remember the acronym here. FPE is fired, hits, and no, it's how many times they fired, right? So each element, fires per element, that's what it stands for, sorry, fires per element. So each element, so one 75mm Pak 40 AT gun, on average, fired 17.75 times. So you can just round and say, okay, each gun fired 18 times. The next, HPE is hits per element, says, okay, it fired 18 times for one gun, but on average, one gun had 12 hits, right? So this is a very good indication, right, of how successful or how accurate maybe a particular piece of equipment was. So a better example may be let's look at this, the 7.92mm PZB 39 anti-tank rifle. So each one of these rifles fired 8 times, but each rifle only hit once, right? So that means about 10%, you had a 10% chance of that anti-tank rifle actually hitting something when it fired. The 75mm Pak 40 AT gun had, I'm sorry guys, I'm doing some rough math here, had a 70% chance of actually hitting per time that it fired. Over to the right, we have 2 breakouts of columns, HE hits and AP hits. And those really, just as simply put as possible, as HE hits are just a regular round, it explodes, it's a grenade, it's just a high explosive impact. AP is going to be more of the one-off, and it's going to be most usually relevant in regards to attacking armored fighting vehicles, right? Armored fighting vehicles have, you guessed it, armor. So you need armor-piercing rounds to try to penetrate that armor. So when you see values here in AP, it usually means it was firing at some type of armored element. So for HE hits, it then breaks down and says, okay, for this 75mm Pak 40 AT gun, 8 of the hits that happened destroyed a unit, 23 damaged a unit, and 14 disrupted a unit, and the average range was at 60 yards, right? So this gives you a good idea then at what range are your various elements engaging at. And then we see that it looks like it also had a total of 3 AP hits, damaging 2 of our Soviet armored fighting vehicles. And that was at a range of 10 yards. So close and heavy, these things are firing a couple of shots at our armored fighting vehicles as they advance towards the line. And considering the overwhelming odds we had and the fact that they just were encircled and surrendered, it probably would paint a picture of, yeah, our forces were rushing in full speed ahead, getting up close and dirty, and just trying to finish off this unit. So this kind of backs up that story. In another example, you may look at a battle report and go, wow, the range on these AP hits is way further out than I thought it might be. And an answer to that might be, or a reason for that may be, perhaps your enemy is engaging you at a further distance, which is actually of detriment to you because perhaps their hardware has more range than your hardware. And it's actually working to their benefit. And then you can start, then, as if we haven't already been doing this, then you can start getting real geeky with this data and looking at, well, what was the average range of a 75mm Pak 40 AT gun? Maybe I should have different anti-tank guns. Maybe the 88 Flak 18 AA gun is what I want more of my units to have, right? That's what all of this data can provide for you. Over here at weapon stats, this breaks it down a little further to where you can actually see, okay, a rifle squad carries all of these different weapons. And again, this blows my mind still every time I look at this. This is the level of detail the game is simulating these battles. It's recording that there were 36 hits from rifle squads where a manpower in the rifle squad used a pistol and actually hit an enemy target. 36 times, right? And here you see that 84 times they hit their target with a hand grenade. So approximately 1/6 of the total hits that these 115 rifle squads had were hand grenades. Again, kind of makes sense when you think about what would 3 entrenched divisions, German divisions, completely surrounded by Soviet forces be doing as they're rapidly closed in by an overwhelming Soviet force. They're probably sitting there in the trenches throwing hand grenades, standing up with their pistols at the last minute. It's all hands on deck here, right? And that's why it was so effective on all those different units. You can see a little more detail here. So, for example, the 7.92mm MG34 machine gun. So this is actually like a machine gun squad, right? So you have the actual machine gun that's being measured here. But then it also looks like you have this 7.92mm Kar 98 rifle armament. I'm afraid I'm not as familiar with, so I can't be as helpful there. Maybe this is a better example. This anti-tank rifle, right? The squad that's manning that anti-tank rifle 5 times used a pistol to hit the enemy, which probably explains why the average range is so stinking low on this anti-tank rifle unit. The level of detail this game simulates, I cannot stress enough. It is astonishing. Absolutely astonishing when you think about all of the factors that it's taking into this game engine to come up with these outputs. So this is a really fun topic to cover, and I know a lot of folks that play this game that they'll only get about a couple of turns into any campaign because all they want to do is just see these simulations and look over all this hardware and go, oh, you know, I know nothing about the 105mm LEF H18 howitzer, right? Let me go research that. Let me go find out what its range actually really was most of the time. Right? Was it really 9,000 yards, etc.? So that's a pretty big summary of our combat resolution overview and the results tabs. I hope it's been helpful. We're going to actually go back to our user preferences menu, and we're going to change this back to 3 in terms of message level, just so that way we can continue on with the rest of the turn in a progressive enough pace to be able to finish out the episode. But the good news is we've already had 1 success here on the Stalingrad front. Now the question is, can we get a second? And dare I say, if we're brave enough, can we even get a third? So let's take a look here at this hex, because it seems like they have about 23 in terms of defensive units, or combat value, excuse me, 25, okay. And we're 1-to-1 with that right now. So that's going to be a pretty tough push if we tried to get in there. I wonder, though, if we can take, like if we took this stack here of 7 and brought it up, that would then give us 32, would give us 32 to 25. And I don't know that there's going to be any units that are more well equipped to come up there and help. So I think we're going to go ahead and do this. So now if we select all of these units, and if we were to attack it, yeah, 34, sorry, to 25. You know, it's not even 2-to-1. But the reason I'm going to do this is I want to exhaust their supplies. I want to make this as painful as possible for them. We are going to incur very heavy casualties. I know we will. But if it reduces their fortification level, and if it reduces their supply situation, we're going to do it. So let's go ahead and attack. And we were held at 50, which doesn't mean that it was a complete failure, but we lost 3,500 men compared to their 370. So next turn, hopefully by getting that fortification level down to 3, the fact that they had to expend so much ammo and supplies to defend themselves, hopefully that means that in the next turn it'll be a little easier to break through. The last one is I think we're going to try to take this far southern hex. This middle one is just insanely fortified because this is kind of the city proper. So let's see what we can do if we take all of these surrounding units and attack. Oh no, it's only 37 to 46. I think we're going to go with a very similar route as we did in the northern hex, so just let's keep putting the pressure on them. So we're going to attack. Yep, we knew we would lose. But at the very least, we got their fortification level down to 2. Right? So incurring heavy losses, but this goes back to our belief that every turn that passes where we don't have Stalingrad is one more turn where our supply situation is desperate on our front line, right? So every turn we try to wait them out in Stalingrad is one more turn that they have to build up the defenses of Rostov, which just means another embattled city to try to conquer. So I think it makes sense that we have such an aggressive attitude to try to finish off Stalingrad. And I actually do wonder if earlier on in, say, turn 8, turn 9, if we should have been a little more aggressive than we were. So, with all of that said, I think we're just going to take a couple of these units and try to get them off the fronts like this one is, right? 76 fatigue, right? There's no need for that to stay up there. And then instead, we're going to bring in, like, the 7th Guard Cavalry, right? Just to try to help out a little. Here, we can probably take... Which one do we want to take? Yeah, like this Rifle Division. Might be able to get down there. Let's take off the line this 116th, because that's 78 fatigue as well, right? And then we're going to bring down that infantry division. Just some shuffling to try to improve the position of our front lines. Down here, we could probably take this 204th Rifle Division. What's the worst unit that we have over here on this side? We're going to take the 138th, because it's 74 fatigue, right? And take you off, and then we'll take the 204th and move you up. So then you're just in a good position then for next turn to really help out. 159th, we're going to do the same with you. I think we'll take off this guards unit. We'll move you up to help. Okay, so just some shuffling of the various units to try to get everyone in a good position for the next offensive during the next turn. Excellent, excellent. Do we have any reinforcements or anything up here on the map? Doesn't look like it. Okay. So let's continue on then with the rest of our push towards Rostov. We did set up this defensive line right here during the last turn. I'm concerned that some of these units had some difficulty getting supply in the last round. As you see, their supply status icons have gone a little to the orange, a little to the red. I do wonder if we don't advance a little bit, like if we could try to cut off on this side of the river, would that stop maybe their advance? You know, at the very least, what I'm thinking is, if I could get to this hex, they're probably relying on this rail line right here in depots to bring up supplies to these units. So what would it look like if we moved up here? All right. Great. Look how difficult that was. We captured it. So now I'm going to move up this rifle division to try to help reinforce. Oh no, that was an artillery division. This is the rifle division I wanted to bring up. And then we'll also take the 52nd Guards and we'll move them down here. And we'll move up the 96th Rifle Division to this hex. Alright. bit of a front line established there. Maybe we bring up the tank corps to help here. I think they're probably fine as is. I mean, there's nothing even within range, so they're not going to be able to counterattack in this next phase, which then should give them enough time to dig in here. So I think we're okay. No need to press anymore there. Okay, so we've cut off that line of supply. I continue to think about this. Maybe it's also worth... Well, no, because we've already taken this town, which then cuts off this route. Trying to think of just, you know, with advanced parties, what more can I do to try to disrupt, intercept, right, the railways and just go on a bit of a run, if you will. Boy, do we maybe take that unit all the way up here? It has enough fuel. It's 105% fuel. I'm gonna do it. Gonna do it. Okay, so we made it that far. And then next turn, I'm wondering if we can be in a position maybe to even go further, right? And if we cut off this town, wow, that starts to become pretty impactful in terms of these units then have only one rail line up here that can supply them with anything. And I do think they're going to pull back, but if we can hasten their retreat, that's always an advantage. So we've done those moves now. I think what we might do, though, is something similar here with, like, the 4th Guards, is can we move them up to Shakti? Yep, there we go. So now we've captured that. I think we will look to see... No, let's start pulling up these guys. Right, try to capture that town. Yep, good job. We'll have... We're going to let these guys advance this way. These units are going to start to move more here. You there. This rifle division can go here. And then the HQ unit we're just going to bring up. Going to move up one more maybe? 2 more. There we go. So now it's back within range. We're going to have to do the same thing here with this HQ. Good. Ah, hell, do we just advance maybe here? Might be worth it. Yeah, let's go down one. All right, there they are. Retreat. We found them. Retreat. Good stuff. We'll go up one more here. There we go. Now we can bring up this HQ unit, which should get us... I don't think we're going to find ourselves within range, but we'll be closer. Okay. Boy, we got aggressive there, and I now feel like it was all on a bit of a whim, but we've started to move the forces up on Rostov. And one of the reasons is just because I do really feel we're so close and nearing the end of the Stalingrad besiegement. And I also believe we're getting pretty close to this rail line. And if this rail line opens up, it's another option for us to then supply these units down here. Boy, we are far from our front lines. I'm also in a bit of a hurry for more reasoning behind this, I suppose, is the more and more I look at the top right at our calendar date, the more and more I go, it would be really nice before the summer months hit to have taken Rostov and maybe even Stalino. Because then that just... I don't want to fight a reinforced Rostov after they've had a chance to bring in all of their reinforcements. I would really like to capture it now if at all possible. And then I think it puts immense pressure on them to be more successful in the north, which is what we've already seen, right? In the south, they have not had really any success, to be fair, actually. Very few counterattacks have been successful for them. I also think we're starting to get some supplies in here. So if we look at this, yeah, look at this. This is good. right? So if we can get some type of route or line established here, we actually have this port that's able to start supplying these units. So this switched where all of these units, all of them, were previously supplied from this port or back here near Grozny. Now the majority of them are actually being supplied here from this port. So I'm really encouraged by that. And we have not yet hit the capacity of this port either. So I think that's some pretty good news all around. And we don't have them repaired, right? But there are infrastructure lines here that can help with this. I think I'm making the right decisions with all of this. So given that, I think we're going to look at bringing these units down to start taking this territory effectively. I think for most of the units, we're going to follow this line south. Have you go there. You units that are already on this line, I'm going to have you move due west. Yep, there you go. Move you way up there. Good, good, good. You can advance on this town. And I'll come up there, yeah. Good stuff. Just painting the map a little by moving that unit through those hexes. Maybe not even worth it to have done it, but it all works out. We're going to move all of you down further south. Right. You can come down here, I think. It's the 65th Army we're moving in. Yeah. Now in the next couple turns we can really start looking at the encirclement of Rostov, which is going to be so key. One of the first steps, right, is just to get all of these units further south here. So, going to have a fair amount of movement here if you can just hold with me as these all move. It's absolutely incredible to think about just these 7 or 8 armies that we have completely in the open. There is no front line established at all, not even close. All we're doing is just we're proving to be this huge mass of bodies moving across the steppes and the plains of I don't think this is technically Ukraine yet, but we're getting pretty close. Still in Russia here, modern day. Come back here, keep moving all of these units up. I think the 28th Army we're going to bring all the way down to Slausk. Actually, even a little further. Yep, so you can, quite a few movement points still. You can come all the way up here. You're a cavalry unit, that's why. This is just going to eat up so many supplies, I don't even want to think about it right now. Let's do the HQ first. The HQ can come up there. And this stack can come here. Good, 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 good. So that's the 28th Army. This is such an incredible force moving on Rostov. Just look at all of this. I think some of you, though, I might leave in this area. We'll move up the 44th Army now. We want the 44th Army to go. I think you're going to follow right behind the 28th, actually. Which might start to get a little messy in terms of the organization of all your units. We'll work through that. Come up here. You are so far away, but you can make it. In the 44th Army, of course it's over its command capacity. Why wouldn't it be? Let's just do the HQ first, and we're going to move the HQ up to the city. There we go. Now the rest of the stack moves. You can come there. It's not often that we get to advance entire armies, their entire movement range, in very low supply with absolutely no opposition. It's a pretty rare thing. Alright. So now we have 4 stacks of 3. Now we have another army to deal with. We have multiple armies here, actually. You need to be assigned to a HQ. Okay, so now you're part of the 9th Army. The 9th Army will go right here. Good stuff. All of you can go to that hex. To a large extent, right, we do want as much of these as close as possible to this depot, because this is now home, right? That's where everything will come from. Who are all part of it. Yeah, 2 different armies, the 37th and the 9th. So we're going to keep the 9th Army together. So we're just going to take those units first. You can go there. And then I actually think, so this is more 9th Army? You're all 9th Army? I flip these. Oh shoot, some of those are the 58th Army. Gosh darn. Okay, well, the 58th Army, which looks like this entire stack here, you're all going to come up there. Need to get those 9th Army guys then out of there in a little bit, but one thing at a time. You're all part of the 46th Army. So now we're going to take these units and we're going to start building these defensive lines. That's 5.2, 3.2, so you can go here to help reinforce. This entire stack, we're going to move up to the actual city border. Look at that. It's right there. So close. Can we take it? Let's do it. Can we take it? Holy crap, we got Rostov. Holy crap. You're kidding me. No freaking way. There's no way we just took it like that. Well, now I don't have content for the next 6 episodes about the siege on Rostov. What the hell? We took Rostov? I'm still a little stunned by this, if that's not obvious enough. How did they let us just waltz in there? They had nothing. They had nothing at all in the city. Wow. Wow. That's astonishing that that happened. Absolutely astonishing. Gonna move you up here, I guess, to help there. Wow. Well, what am I gonna do with all these armies now? There's no city to siege. There's no city to surround. What the hell? Can you come down and just completely cut this off? Holy crap. We now have a complete line of supply from this depot up here to these units. Okay, so we're going to get a little more aggressive here to make sure we capture all of this. This is just slowly becoming uncontrolled chaos. I guess we have to move you up a little bit more. You, guard tank corps, I need you to come up here. Okay. This This is insanity. This is not at all how I thought this would unfold. Let's just take a look. Holy crap. I I really don't know what the new plan is now. Now I guess we march on Stalino? Is that the next move? What? Do we just open up this huge front in the Ukraine, I guess? This is so baffling to me that they have nothing down here. Should we have done all of this 5 turns sooner? Wow. Okay. Well, now one of the big questions is going to be how quickly can we get this hex, because this has a port, and I would really like the port, because that will only help my supply situation. I would also like this port. I would like all of these ports, please, because then our supply situation becomes so much easier. Wow. This is absolute insanity. Okay, well, I guess we're just... Some of these units we're just going to be more aggressive with than we were previously. Hey, there's no two ways about it. Because little did I know that we would capture Rostov this turn. How could I have known? Yeah, I guess technically if you go there, you're defending the northern flank. I don't think they're going to do anything, but just we'll always be ready, I guess, is the motto. Okay. Yeah, so we've gotten a lot more aggressive with some of these armies, considering, you know, our complete upset and surprise victory this turn. Can't figure this out. Yeah, and it's the actual Rostov hex. It's not like that's Rostov. That's not Rostov. This is Rostov. Look, Rostov. Wow. Okay. Sure. Sounds good. On to Stalino 2021. 1943, I guess, but get my point. What's the new strategic objective now? The rush to the Crimea? I really do need to think about this, because I was expecting I would have, like, I don't know, 10 more episodes to figure out how do we move through the Ukraine. But now we've just... Yeah, we've skipped past this entire siege. This would have been such an opportunity for them, too, to form a defensive line. But look at this. They didn't even try, it seems like. These units will have to fall back. Surely these units will fall back now that they don't have any supply from the south here. And that all that they're left with is this one rail line. Which next turn, I move this unit just a couple hexes up. And that rail line is taken away from them, too. And honestly, this rail line isn't even an option anymore because we took this hex. All of these units that the Germans have right here, next turn will have no supply from rail. None. They will have no supply going directly to these HQs or units via rail line. Which probably explains a lot more now that I look at it. These units that are in poor supply condition. Wow. We still have not even, like, the 6 armies that are currently besieging Stalingrad haven't even made it to the front yet. So I obviously have a lot to think about in between episodes here, but I think just the first priority is going to be we need to get all of these armies up and create a front line right here, north-south from Rostov. And as soon as we can, start pushing west to get to the outskirts of Stalino. I mean, if we hit a German line, we're not going to push until we get all of these units up here and to get them resupplied again. By the time these all advance another, think about this, they need to advance another 100 miles in blizzard-like conditions in February 1943 just to get to the front line now. And that's if they actually defend this. Now I'm starting to wonder, are they going to defend Stalingrad, or do we just get to have that too? So many questions. But yeah, we might have to have these guys just sit entire turns building back up supply, because even if every port's running at capacity, there's not enough trucks to deliver all the foodstuffs or all the ammunition. What a coup. What a victory. I wish I could take credit for it, but I don't think I can. So on that note, let's continue looking through the rest of our front lines. We're just going to take these stacks here and move them north, I guess. Because what else are you to do when you capture your 10-turn strategic objective in 1 turn? Yep, so take all of you and move all of you up. Don't need to go all the way, but... Oh, shoot, I know what I forgot. Gosh darn it. Gosh darn it. This 10th Guards unit and this 3rd Rifle Corps, I was going to have go down and help with the Crimea. Yeah, and I'm also going to have you guys do the exact same thing. You're going to go down and you're going to help with the Crimea. That's what you're going to do. So between the amphibious landing and these like 4 rifle corps we're going to move up, we're going to use those to push on the Crimea. That's the plan. Good plan? Good plan. All of you other rifle divisions, though, can keep moving up. I knew I was going to forget that. I just knew it. Look at all of you. This is just insanity. Absolute insanity. All of you HQ units can move up too. Look at this. And you're the actual Trend Caucasus front, so you can come all the way up here. What does this front get to be called now that we actually have Rostov? That's my question. Move up the 4th Air Army too. And here we have the North Caucasus front, which I think we might leave you because I think you're involved with the siege of Crimea. Look at this too. Railroads. Railroads are being repaired, people. Look at this. Look at this great news. Over here, railroads being repaired. That's so exciting. Somewhere else up here, I feel like I had, yeah, right here. But they're still waiting for the Stalingrad front to be finished. That's why they haven't done anything, really. Look at you. We're going to have a rail line here soon enough. Okay, well, I don't know how much more of a high point we can end this episode on. So we're going to call it here. Let's, out of paranoia, make sure we allow the AI to manage depots. And then we will end our turn and continue babbling on about, holy crap, we got Rostov. So, go through all the usual phases. We're doing air resupply for ourselves. Then we'll get into the Germans' AI phase, their air phase, and then their ground phase, where maybe they're going to launch a massive counter-assault to take Rostov. I mean, it seems about as likely as us taking it this turn. We are really bringing in a lot of freight to that one specific hex, it looks like. Kind of wish all of these air transport freights would be going down by Rostov, to be honest with you. There's just so much of a need there. But I suppose we do have to consider the rest of the entirety of the front, so that makes sense. I think it's been a pretty good turn, turn 12. Certainly Certainly did not suck. It's going to be interesting now is I think what we will do is we will open up episode 24 with a bit of a strategic review again. I think that would be in order considering the efforts we've made to try to push um, across to Riga and the Rostov success and the very soon to be finished Stalingrad pocket. I think it's probably worth us reviewing again what some of the strategic priorities are. So here's the logistics phase for the Germans. I'm really, really curious to see what they do in terms of counterattacks. I do hope we're able to keep that hex that is just south of Lake Ilmen, because I do believe that that hex, the hex next to it, they are key to us breaking through that pocket. I really do believe that, because that's going to widen their front and force them to take the SS Panzergrenadier divisions that they moved up north towards Leningrad that are so strongly outfitted. It's going to force them to split themselves up to try to defend a wider front. Whereas right now we have this bottleneck where they're able to defend 3 armies worth of divisions in the space of 2 or 3 hexes. So as soon as we break that bottleneck, the better. Because it's playing into their defensive advantage to have all of us stuck there. The same thing is going to happen a little bit further south on that front as we try to push through to Riga, where there's just a couple of hexes right now that are open, and that's why we have such a rush to get the 5th Army over there to finally break through. For the air army phase, or excuse me, the Luftwaffe phase, it seems like they're doing more air recon, and all of their losses are operational, right? So I know it's not entirely this, but I would pin most of those being weather related. It doesn't seem like coincidence to me that they're flying 182 sorties in heavy snowfall conditions and they've lost 16 planes, but none to flak, none to the ground, and none to air combat. So I'm pretty sure it's all weather related. It's a little interesting. They ran recon for 3 days of the week. When our AI was setting up recon missions, it was only running them for 2 days. So that's a little interesting. Oh, look. It looks like the Romanian divisions might be trying to break out of the Rostov pocket. As long as they don't take Rostov, I'm actually fine with them leaving, because I just want the port that they're occupying. I could kind of care less about 2 Romanian divisions escaping from our encirclement. I just want the port, man. Give me the supplies. That's what I'm in for. So hopefully they do move those when they get to their Axis reallocation of the defensive line, which comes towards the end of their ground movement phase. I'm about to say it doesn't look like they're counterattacking anywhere else, which is just setting me up for them to have massive counterattacks all along our front. But really it's sitting here at 14%, and I wonder if they're going to be doing anything at all. Still at 14%. Since I had such good luck and I had such good karma with Rostov, this is probably now the negative karma coming back to say, nope, game client crashed. Which, to the developer's credit, I have not had any performance issues with this game. Haven't had any crashes, I haven't had any screen freezes, haven't had any glitches or map overlay bugs or anything like that. It's really run quite flawlessly. Again, I'm just going to keep talking to make sure that I don't get out of this simulation that it's currently running. But it does sound like it's doing something in the background, because I can hear the effects of units moving. Maybe they're sitting there just like I was, going, Bill, I thought you were going to defend Rostov. No, Fred, you were going to defend Rostov. Maybe that's what's happening. I could picture that. In that bunker with Hitler yelling at the map from the, movie Downfall. That's probably what's happening right now. Is he sitting there going, no one defended Rostov? Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Here it looks like they have air resupply. And here we have a Yak-7B intercepting their Ju-86C. The message delay seems to be taking longer on the air combat, so I may have missed a setting when I reverted us back, because it shouldn't normally be taking this long to go through the resolution of the air phase combat. Yak 7B intercepting JU-86C. JU-86C crashes. Hurricane 2 intercepting JU-86C. He's kind of entertaining to watch, in all honesty. It's just taking a while. Looks like our Yak 7Bs are being pretty successful here, which is a good thing. Can I maybe close out of it and they'll finish? Yeah, okay. So we're just going to do that to try to speed it up. I'll have to make sure I have the settings good there. Okay, so they are pushing here by the Smolensk front, and we're holding. So that's good. We held the line. Held the line again on the Smolensk front. Good news. And here we were routed, which is less than good news. Again, Smolensk front. Looks like we were retreated out of there. It's interesting, we're actually seeing their fog of war right now. We have a lot more units back here, but they don't know that. Oh no, they broke through. This is kind of by our push towards Riga. Hold, hold, hold. Hold that line. I need you to hold that line. Good. Good they held. This is one of those SS Panzergrenadier divisions they brought up. That's not good. We're not going to be able to hold out against that for too long. Third attack. No, no. The third attack, they pushed us back. Shoot. Shoot. That's not good. I was really hoping we were going to be able to hold that. This is by Orel. That's a big counterattack. That's a total of 6 divisions they're attacking us with. But we're holding the line. Keep holding, guys. Please, keep holding. Good job. Oh, one more. Hold. You can do it. Attack halted at 875. Wasn't even close. Good job, guys. One more. Keep holding. Keep holding. No, they pushed through the line. That's not good. Oh, wow. Wow, they've gotten really aggressive. They actually pushed up into that hex and then kept counterattacking. We haven't seen that from them in, well, since probably the beginning turns of the scenario. They might be trying to encircle my push on Orel. That might work to our favor considering the reinforcements we brought up. Interesting. It almost looks like they moved units here from this side of the front and over. But I am really worried by the southern Leningrad front where we are pushing towards Riga and the success that they had there. That worries me a lot more than Orel. Orel is like that shiny object on the ground, right? It's the penny that's sitting there. It's an opportunity, but it's not a strategic objective. And now they're doing their last air resupply. What a turn. What a turn. No counterattacks in the south by Rostov. And now it's the logistics phase. So we'll wrap up with our end of turn summary and news events as we usually do. And then we'll call the episode to a close. Honestly, my heart's kind of racing after all of that. That was so intense. I still don't know how we capture Rostov. How did that happen, guys? How? It's like a birthday party or something like that. Just a surprise. Right, 61% of our logistics phase, 68 now. Okay, so we're getting there. Give it just another minute here to finish running the simulation. Hopefully after our mechanic that we explored in the episode today, you got to see, right, just the level of complexity that is simulating things, right? How many times did pistols fire from rifle squads and hit the enemy, right? This is not combat resolutions with board games, +4 modifier for defending heavy woods and roll the dice, right? This is pretty intense stuff behind the scenes here. All right, so turn summary, 64,000 losses on our side. That's getting a little bit back towards our higher averages. 1,100 gun platforms destroyed, 500 armor destroyed, 35 airframes destroyed. I think a lot of those armor and gun platform losses can probably be attributed to both the Stalingrad assaults. We've just been throwing wave after wave of divisions at the Stalingrad pocket, and also these most recent counterattacks that the Germans had against us. When we look at our total order of battle net changes, we see that we lost 30,000 men, 224 gun placements, 283 armored fighting vehicles, but we are a net gain 360 airframes. We broke our more recent trend here where the Germans actually saw an increase of 35,000 men in their order of battle net change. So that is actually a swing that erases all the progress we made in the previous turn. So that's a little unfortunate. We do see that they gained gun platforms and armored fighting vehicles. And we see that our supply levels, we actually went up to 80, which is just a little higher than we were before, but it's not 140, so I'm still happy about that. That's still a pretty good situation. I think we're going to have a lot of review to do in the next 2 episodes of the counterattacks the Germans had and our advance to build a defensive line around Rostov. So it should be 2 very interesting episodes. When we look at a mechanic to introduce during turn 13, it might be a more simplistic one that takes a little less time to explain, just because I really do want to focus a little bit on the gameplay and the decisions that we have to make with such a volatile front line right now. I think that this is going to be one of those turns where we just have a lot of things to cover. So now we look at news events here. We see that the mighty 8th Air Force raids have continued, so they're targeting rail yards and heavy industry that are having some effect on the Germans. The Germans had success in the North African air campaign, so that sets back the invasion of Sicily in the Italian campaign. Soviet partisans continue to be active in German-occupied Soviet territory. And wartime rationing. I haven't seen this one before, so... Okay, so this is talking about rationing that happened in each of the countries in the United States and Britain and Germany. Okay. And it's just a little bit of flavor text, if you will, right, to help explain the situation of what was life like in 1943 with the war lasting as long as it did. We've had a great episode today, guys. Thank you so much for giving this a watch. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, please be sure to add them in the comments section, and I'll do my best to address them. And with that, have yourselves a great day, strategy gamers. Bye now.